Everyone, Hans here. Hope all of you are doing well. I definitely am doing perfectly fine. It's actually getting better and better on my part, and I definitely hope the same for all of you. You might be able to tell by my somewhat more rosier than usual cheeks, by my ruddy or rouge complexion, that it's summertime, and of course, at this point in time, it's midsummer. It's the summer solstice is going on. I hope all of you can celebrate it. I know some friends of mine unfortunately cannot, and well, I hope that we can make it possible that at least next year then they can enjoy so. And if you can, hey, go out in nature, sit around, have a picnic with friends and family, and talk about nice, healthy things, and overcome your woes. You know, it's a perfect time to do so. So, what do I want to go on about? There is something to be said. I've been chatting with friends, not as much as I like to. I've been living a little bit like a hermit, and I do not consider that a bad thing myself. Some people do. But that gave me time to work on some personal projects of mine that I do not even know if they'll ever become a thing. It's um, it's just something I want to do, what I like to do, and it had to come out because it was on my mind for something that was on my mind for a very long time, and I'd finally decided to externalize it. I wanted to bring it into reality, or in the material world, if you will. Um, but more on that in another video, perhaps. We'll see. Now, there were friends of mine, a few, who I managed to talk with briefly in the last few days, who were telling me that they saw this character, and it's no point in naming the one because there's many of these types, who are I wonder how specific I should go. Maybe it's worthwhile going specific. So we're all aware that in the 20th century there was this political system that used European heritage as a sort of market stall to lure in, people of European descent by saying, "Hey, this is for you, Whitey. Come on over. We're gonna make the world a better place for you." And even today, a lot of people still fall for the scheme. It is very sad, but what can you do? And granted, a lot of the people who were part of that system were actually genuine guys, but far fewer than people would like, and definitely not the top men. So, what we have in the 21st century, the early 21st century, so almost 100 years later, we have these characters who show up and they like pointing fingers, but there is a clever trick they're trying to do. You see, well, they're basically applying the same trick as that older political party of the 20th century did. They see a people's native culture and they want to harness that people's ability. So what do? They portray themselves as standing up for that culture, which is what that people is lured in by. It's kind of like a honeypot, if you will. And the honey is no less sweeter, but it's placed in a cage, if you will. And many naive, well-meaning, good-natured people let themselves be pulled right into that. Granted, it's far more complex on the real scale of things. A lot of atrocities were committed that also drove people in that direction. So a fair bit of desperation and fear was part of it, as well, as much as just wanting to do well and being there for your family, standing up for the nation that you came from, and all of that, which at the time was a big deal. I do not think so anymore, and well, what have you? I have my personal thoughts on that. Let's just say I'm not really about nations that much either. But that's by the wayside. My personal opinions in that is I'll talk about it at some point, and then people can decide for themselves what they think of that, I guess. At this point in time, sharing about that, I don't really see anything there that I can share that is gonna help people. Not right now, maybe eventually. But these figures in the 21st century now, they saw what was done in the 20th century, and they figured, like the snakes they are, that they can use that people's, white people's, European people's culture as a lure. And since that there is nothing new under the sun, although the same tricks are being allowed to be used over and over on people, these types are of a new political order, if you will, a new intentionally world order. They often say it of themselves. And with that intention, they need to lure people in. They need to fool people, right? So what does a friend of mine come to me with? Shows me one of these characters, and he speaks about, it's bigoted, and it's homophobic, and it's all of these anti-white slurs to partake with that 20th century ideology, and European native culture has nothing to do with that ideology when it comes down to it. And at that point in time, well, minus the use of the anti-white slurs, because this is aimed at white people, this isn't aimed at anyone else, which makes it an anti-white slur. I hope people understand that it is just a ruse. Well, maybe I'll get into that in a bit. I'm gonna stick on point now. So, I listen to that and I figure, you're right. You're right that it is absolutely disgusting for political connivers and even religious fanatics who try to use European heritage as a kind of market stall for their doctrine, for their artificial system to control people, that it is wrong to do that. It's manipulation of the most despicable kind, because they destroy a lot of that. They destroy a lot of that European culture in that process, if given half the chance, and they don't care. They don't care about whites. They don't care about the actual culture. They're willing to manipulate with it in the first place. It tells you really all you need to know. But then here comes this clever trick that this character was doing that was shown to me, and it starts to go on this rant of, we need to be inclusive and tolerant and blah blah blah. You know, all of the talismanic words to make people, fool people into believing they're doing something good. Can anyone tell what's going on there? Maybe pause the video and give it a thought. And if you have paused and you've come back, then you might have figured it out already. I think most of you would have. Is that this character was just trying to take away European native culture and use it for his own political uses. What is happening there is he's not fighting against, the evil 20th century regime. No. He doesn't give anything about that. It's a sleight of hand where he's basically trying to get people to say, you see, those are the bad guys, but when we take it, you see what's happening there? When we take this European people's culture, their deities, their music, their artistry, their craftsmanship, if we are gonna use it in our market stall, we're gonna take it away from the competition. But what has happened here? It's just being traded from one political gang to the other political gang. Why? To lure white people in. To lure Europeans in, or people from European descent. Doesn't matter if you're from the USA. Doesn't matter if you're from New Zealand, Australia. You have as much of an inheritance there as anyone that actually lives in Europe itself. And look how beautiful it is, by the way. So what is the trick then? Or what, understanding then this that there is this sleight of hand going on. What do we then also notice? Is that white people, European people, are not allowed to have their own culture apparently, because these gangs want to run off with it and dictate what can be taught about it and what can't be. You think that is respectable? No, these are petty. This is what, here is one. There is a man, a Jewish man, going by the name of Wilhelm Reich. And a lot of people might be detested by that very fact. I'm a little indifferent to it. I do not really like to, how shall I put it? I have a dislike for non-whites who adopt white names as much as the reverse. But I'm not gonna trip all over it either. This was a guy who was a psychologist and quite a lot of other things too. Clever fella. And he actually sided with Western thought. This guy actually said to himself, I'm not gonna partake in my own race, its way of thinking, because it's backwards or whatever it's gonna be. I mean, I can't read the guy's mind, of course. And he ended up, being killed for what he stood for. But this man left quite a little bit of a legacy, where he said that there is this concept of the little man, as they call it, the petty man. And the petty man is a creature that has no creativity, who is pathetic in nature, who is cruel and cowardly. Those two tend to go hand in hand. And they're sickeningly envious of anyone that is bigger than they are. And what does that mean? Or that they consider bigger than themselves. What that tends to mean is people who are brave, upstanding. Sometimes, it's not about being physically big or small. No, it's the size of the spirit, the size of the mind, if you will. And these envious types have no respect for anything, because they think that they deserve everything just for existing. They think that they've been dealt a bad hand and that it is everyone else's fault rather than their own lack of doing what they should have done, which is improve their own selves. And being jealous is one thing, but envy, jealousy is, oh, I wish I had what that other guy had. Guess I'll have, but he's welcome to it, and I guess I'll have to work towards it myself. No, envy is that guy has something, and not only is it that the envious creature wants it for oneself, no, it's that the other one is not allowed to have it. The other one is the great artist that the envious man can not be or refuses to be, doesn't deserve those artistic abilities, even though that artist worked really hard to have them. And it goes to every field. These types of little men are the ones who do this sort of thing. They're pathological, they're twisted, and they are immoral, to put it mildly. But they are very good at posing themselves as moral, using all these big words and talismanic terms to hypnotize with. The worm tongues. It's the worm tongues of Lord of the Rings. They do exist and they're all over the place. They don't look the part, in the movie, if this black haired in his stinking rags, it's like pale and what have you. And granted, most little men, you can see that something is wrong with them, but you need to have the eye for it, and you need to have the spine to say, look, yeah, it's probably one of them. But you can tell by their mouth. That's where it's really at. But again, that takes the ability to notice it. So these little men, they look at, this is where every anti-white ever comes from, by the way. Every anti-white is envious of the white race. Maybe they're also envious of other races. That is possible. But every race is, responsible for its own destiny, and I think that's fair. That's how I look at it. I won't get in anyone's way, and I expect the same. If anyone gets in my way, well, then they will have made that flaw in their thinking, I suppose. But you see what I'm getting at with that, is that Europeans, or people of European descent, are not allowed to have their own culture, or at least not according to these gangs, these political gangs, these religious gangs. And they are sweet talkers. The pot of honey is a real thing. The European culture is there. But the trick is to say, yeah, but we're the worker bees. Even if you try to steal that, that honey does not belong to you, and even if you try to trap us with some of it, we'll create more of it. We might even recreate what you have put inside that cage. I think that's far healthier, and you don't need to go after them at all. Just don't fall for their hypnotic nonsense. And yeah, I suppose everything else is just self-improvement. Be a bigger man. What did Nietzsche call it? The greater man. Nietzsche was a little bit more optimistic in his view, I suppose, towards man. Now, yeah, I think there is nothing else to be said there. I think that is predominantly the point I wanted to make. You need to be careful. And it's not just the one guy, it's not just two guys. But usually you can tell them by, or maybe I should go into this. What you can tell them by is that usually they're addicted to alcohol, they're addicted to drugs. That's very common. That doesn't mean that every addict is a little man. Some people go into that just to escape their lives. It's, that's the whole purpose, like becoming dull to life, dulled to the experience of life. That's what drugs are for. So they do not tend to get taken by people who are happy about their lives. Which says a lot if you then realize that even the most materially wealthy people, the ones with all the dollars in their suitcases and all that, most of them are also users. I don't think that's a sign of happiness, and I, by extent, do not think that you can have all the money in the world, but you can still be deep down absolutely a little man, miserable, wretched. But yeah, so you can recognize them by being, drinkers and drug users. Again, not everyone who drinks is that. There is a difference. It's like, yeah, it's about having a learned eye and see the difference between someone who's just enjoying a beer and someone who is just boozing away just to forget some memory or whatever it's gonna be. Takes skill, takes practice. You're not gonna see it overnight. But you can work towards that. That is your personal responsibility. One of them. I had to learn it too, so I'm not having... Well, I do not expect it all. I am not having anyone give me any lip on that. The ones who will give me lip on that are the ones who do not want to do the work, and well, that's your own fault if you get taken advantage by these types. Which they will do, because that's all they live for. Power. Which is the next sign. They're powerless, petty people who want power. In Lord of the Rings there is even, if you have read The Children of Húrin, there is even the petty dwarfs, who have been outcasted by the dwarfs. They're smaller, they're meaner, they are vicious, they're cruel. Well, maybe not necessarily so cruel, but they're just, they're not nice. Let's put it like that. You wouldn't want them as your neighbors. And such types of people do in fact exist. It's not a nice thing to think about, but it is the reality. There was a point I thought that I was going to get into, and now I forgot it, of course. Could rewind the video, but then I have to stop it. So I'll get back to that in the comment section if anyone wants to get my thoughts on that specific point that I can't come to my mind right now. Yeah. And yeah. What else is there to be said in that regard? They tend to look a little disheveled, but you know, you have many petty men who are, they're wearing the tuxedos and they have like their hair done and in like all these fancy ways, and they're coming from the manicure or whatever that's called, you know, nail thingy, the whole nail scrubby stuff, as if you can't do it yourself. And they look real good, but they give a bad vibe. It's also something for Lord of the Rings, you know, look fair but feel foul. Frodo's words. Look for that too, I guess. You know, are they saying all the right things? Do they look great and all of that, but do they feel right? And over the internet, you know, that's always very difficult to tell. And then, yeah, I suppose the mistake that a lot of people make, and now I used to be one of them, and I think I still, well, I definitely have worked a lot on that, but I used to think the best in people. Stop doing it. The real, genuine, good people, they can take a hit. In that sense of, if you are, they do not need to worry about you being distrusting at first. No, not at all. It's the bad people who need to worry about naturally distrusting types. Because those are the people who will ask questions. And questions is something that petty men do not like. Which is, by the way, why you should ask them about their past. Hey, you know, what kind of life have you lived? How did you end up here? You know, how many friends do you have? What's your family like? Did you get along with mom and dad? Were mom and dad even around? And again, if their response is something like disgust and they want to run away from the question, or they give you like the whole runaround and didn't really answer the question, that sort of thing, you know something is off, and they're being disingenuous with you when they answer like that. Maybe not outright dishonest, but disingenuous. And that is something that every petty man is. Unauthentic. Unauthentic lives is what they live. They're not a true self. They create personas. And now we're walking into narcissist, sociopath and psychopath territory. That's what I made videos about before. Yeah. There's something else I can say to that. There's many of them. And all of them, they see the ability that white people have. Maybe also other races too, and I'm not going to comment on that too much, because I do not know. You know, it's not for me to talk about others. I talk about my own, and that's fair. As much as these other people, you know, they can talk about their own. What's the big fuss about that people have? I think it's far more disrespectful to speak as if you're speaking on the behalf of others who are not there in the room. Which also says a lot about these types who use all these talismanic terms, all these anti-whites, which are always anti-white slurs, because that's the intention. It's always the intention to enslave or to harm whiteys. And enslavement, yeah, back in the day that used to mean that you have a chain around your ankle or whatever it's going to be. Today that means that you're unable to live your life to the fullest, because you're forced, or you are emotionally cudgeled into doing something what another wants, not what you want. Again, you know, the master-slave thing. That's also the big one. The ones who want to use, the ones, you know, be it religious fanatics or political connivers, or maybe there is even something else out there, but I think those are the two main ones. What it always comes down to is they always follow systems because they're uncreative. That means that, for example, like the rules for radicals thing from Lenin, I believe it was, it is used as a manual by these types. So be very careful, you know, and keep an eye out for that. Read these manuals yourself. For good people, those books are a warning, and for bad people, they're manuals. That is also, you know, yeah, so open up a book, I suppose, or at least stick close to people who do read them. And well, then hopefully you'll accumulate the wisdom over the years, the insight to deal with these types, because that's how everything is gonna get better. But enough of that. I want to talk about something else too, because it is midsummer and it should be a time for joy and dance and fires. And by the way, there's gonna be at this point in time, as I make this video, there's gonna be an alignment of the planet soon. I only heard about it myself recently. It's quite a few planets are gonna align. Like that is something worth, in my eyes, something worth staying awake for if you can. So look into that, guys. You know, it doesn't happen too often. You may wanna. You're gonna have to wake up real soon, real early. I mean, so yeah, that's a bit of a pity, I guess. But you know, that's it's still pretty awesome, I would say. Uh, but yeah, as far as what else I wanted to go on about this, I've seen also some videos of people who are in a panic state. Oh, we're being outnumbered. It's all gonna go south. Everything is going bad. We have terrible people who have sway over us. Well, I have my thoughts on that too. Some of it is also information that I've garnered from others, and I find myself agreeing with it. I might not comprehend it in 100% yet, but I think I'm confident enough to already share what I do know. Is that people who think in master-slave dynamics, people basically who are always looking for the next savior, the next leader to lead them. These are people who think, or you know, who want to be the leader. Oh, we're the big boss. Or I'm the big boss. Oh, that sort of nonsense. The people who think like that, they're trapped in a mindset where they will never be happy. The healthy mindset, dare I say, the European mindset, is that no, you need to be your own man, your own woman. And actually only then can you need to understand yourself, you need to be willing to face yourself. It's not for everyone, unfortunately, because it takes bravery, and it takes a certain toughness, it takes a mental toughness. Many people run away from doing that, but then, you see all the misery in the world, so to say, or the misery that is present, because there's still a lot of good going on as well. But all the misery in the world, most people, they only have themselves to thank for it, for giving in. Seriously, I'm not even kidding. Most people who are slaves, they are really in a mindset of, well, guess I'll go work for someone then. Like my family is going to starve if I don't do anything, so I guess I'm just gonna run along. Everyone else is doing it, right? Oh, well, yeah. Then we have a problem, haven't we, with people thinking like that en masse. It's not what in the USA, it's not what the founding fathers stood for, I believe. They were a little bit more proactive. And careful with that too, because some of them, they're not necessarily as nice, I think, as history would have it. But all in all, the attitudes like that, the get up and take action attitudes, like believing in yourself, but like in the true sense of that you have a right to exist, that you are a good person, that you deserve good things. It all needs to start from there. Stand in the minute, think about it. Deal with your own shadow, as they would call it, I suppose. Understand the aspects of yourself that you think are good and the ones that you think are less than good. And rather than trying to squash that which is not good, no. Make it serve good. And then when you can do that, when you have mastered yourself in that sense, then you can look to the world around you and say, you know what, I did all that hard work mastering myself. Think I'm due some stuff from this place here. Because now I've made myself a good person, or at least a very, very well-intentioned person, man or woman. So now I can take some action, or now I can maybe ask something from the world around, provided that I do some right by it myself. Something to think about. Yeah. Whew. It's getting a little bit too hot for my taste. I'm gonna have to look up some shade. Shadow isn't always a bad thing, When you're sitting too long in the light, you might end up looking like a lobster as me. But yeah, I wanted to share this because I am concerned about people. I do not want us to swing the pendulum just in another direction. I want us to become free, wild and free, the good thing, the good life, you know? And no longer accept the rule of those who are petty and small and try to cope for that by telling others what to do. I've had enough of it, more than enough, and I know plenty of others who have too. But you have to be able to tell to yourself that you deserve to be free, and you have to have the guts to be wild. Doesn't mean insane or what have you, or insane, just means letting your spirit grow. Maybe that's a bit vague, but unfortunately right now I have to quit it because the machine is gonna give in. I think I gave enough to think about for now, so you all enjoy your midsummer, as will I, and talk to you soon.